Hello, good evening, and welcome to a new episode of Arguably the Reading Quest. I am Nishant. If you've still not subscribed to my channel, please do that and please watch the video till the end. So, in this video, I'm going to talk about a very famous short story, but very less talked about in social media, that is Ward Number 6 by Anton Chekhov. I mean, many stories of Chekhov are being talked about, but not this story. And this is one of the classics of, existential philosophy, that how in the face of absurdity we are left with no choice. And the quintessential question of existential philosophy, why me? Or why are the things, uh, why the things are the way they are and why not the other way around? Why is there something rather than nothing? These are the key questions that are thematically explored in this. And then, when your mind, the greatest question of the absurd, that when your mind when your logical or rational mind collides with the absurdity of the world, with the chaos of the world, the absurd is born, and the events cannot be explained logically. What has to happen will happen. Not that it is destined, but sometimes it's just the absurdity of the world. So this book discusses, a lot of themes, this particular short story. And this is such a beautiful, haunting short story. If you, want to read something about, the hospital ward, as in mentioned in uh, Thomas Mann's The Magic Mountain, or as is mentioned in The Imposium by Olga Tokarczuk, I believe this is one story. And every time I read it, every time I reread it, it just captures my breath. I hold on my breath. So, ward number 6 is, of course, it's about a doctor's attempt to befriend his most interesting patient. Now, Janet Malcolm writes here in her preface to ward number 6 is that Chekhov always leaves the meaning of a tale in some doubt, as if he were telling it precisely in order to illustrate his awareness of the pitiful incompleteness of human knowledge. And that is where, Chekhov sometimes becomes even more, interesting and penetrating than Dostoevsky or Tolstoy. Dostoevsky and Tolstoy, they have a complete omniscience of human nature, but not Chekhov. Chekhov completely admits that, uh, he and his, knowledge of human destiny is incomplete. And that is where Chekhov leaves his mark. So, this novella addresses the condition of mental institutions, that too without flinching. It opens up with a second person perspective point of view, which has you walking towards ward number 6, a dilapidated lodge on the grounds of an insane asylum. So, ward number 6 is set in a provincial hospital and centers on the conflict between a doctor and one of his mentally ill patients. The doctor is Andrei Efimech and the patient is Ivan Dmitri. Written in 1890s, years before the solid development in clinical psychology, it is remarkable that Chekhov was able to tell a story that discusses issues around mental health with such depth and insightfulness. He questions what it is to be human. How does society judge us to be mentally ill? You can see some reflection of Michel Foucault here as well. How do we decide that one person is sane, another person is insane? And what happens to those we deem insane? We separate them from society, and whose and who benefits whose benefit do you think that is really for? Certainly not for the resident of the hospital ward themselves, perhaps for society as a whole. So the doctor compares the hospital to a nearby prison, when in reality the inmates of both buildings are treated little differently in the wider outside world. So there's this quote you can see at my computer screen. So the patient asks the doctor, "Why do you keep me here?" The doctor replies, "Because you are ill." "Yes, I am ill. but dozen, hundreds of other madmen walk about in freedom because your ignorance is incapable of distinguishing us from the healthy. You, your assistant, caretaker, and all the hospital scoundrels have morals far lower than ours. So why are we stuck here and you are not? Where is the logic? And it is about a growing relationship between a doctor and a sophisticated patient. Dostoevsky is summoned here, and his philosophy comes into play. Suffering heightens the life, and those that lack it don't live. In other words, the privileged who have never suffered a day in their life can't understand what it means to live. How can you know joy without pain? It is also a commentary on how individuals with intelligence are neglected, ignored, abused if they don't meet the social expectation. So, a doctor befriends a patient, and then suddenly some rumor starts that this doctor has started visiting the patient, and then the fate of the patient befalls on him. So, whatever happened to the patient started happening to him. So, kind of a very, very eerie, a sense of impending horror that is to come. And then in a leisure journey with a friend and a loan to his friend, the doctor loses all his saving and his pensions, falls in poverty. The authorities of the city think he's better closed in the hospital, and he rushes him, to close in the hospital ward number 6 with his patient Ivan. Andre falls in desperation, and try to escape. He's caught up and beaten and died painfully. And then Anton Chekhov says that in his burial, only 2 persons show up. That is what the story is about. A beautiful, beautiful existential exposition of, how absurd life can be. I believe, apart from the comment on the asylum as a mental institution, it is about the absurdity of life. What Kafi Azmi says that yahi hota hai to aakhir yahi hota kyun hai? That is what is exposited in this book. So, how it started, how the patient, Ivan got there, you see. Some 12 or 15 years ago, an official called Gromov, a highly respectable and prosperous person, was living in his own house in the principal street of the town. You see how the urgency is built up and how you can feel the crescendo, the climax, suddenly revealing it to you. He was living in his own house in the principal street of the town. He had 2 sons, Sergei and Ivan. When Sergei was a student in his 4th year, he was taken ill with galloping consumption and died. And his death was the first of a whole series of calamities which suddenly showered on the Gromov family. Now, within a week of Sergei's funeral, the old father was put on a trial for fraud and misappropriation. He died of typhoid in the prison hospital soon afterward. Now, the house with all their belonging was sold by auction. Ivan and his mother were left entirely without means. Hitherto, in his father's lifetime, Ivan, who was studying in the University of Petersburg, had received an allowance of 60 or 70 rubles a month and had had no conception of poverty at all. Now he had to make an abrupt change in his life. He had to spend his time from morning to night giving lessons for next to nothing, to work at copying, and with all that to go hungry. As all his earnings were sent to keep his mother, Ivan could not stand such a life. He lost his heart and strength. Giving up the university, went home. Here, though interest, he obtained the post of a teacher in the district school, but could not get on with his colleagues, was not liked by the boys, and soon gave up the post. His mother died. He was for 6 months without work, living on nothing but bread and water. Then he became a court usher. He kept this post until he was dismissed owing to his illness, and finally he was admitted to the hospital ward number 6. You see, this is how, with such urgency, the story builds up. That a very, very, mm, you know, sane gentleman from a well to do family suddenly ended up in a hospital ward. How one calamity after another befalls him, and, he was completely, completely uh, helpless in the face of that faithfulness. Now you see how the story turns around. A rather strange rumor has, however, been circulating in the hospital of late. It is rumored that the doctor has begun to visit ward number 6. And then please see there's a conversation between the doctor and the patient. Andre liked Ivan's voice and his intelligent young face with grimaces. He longed to be kind to the young man and soothe him. He sat down on bed beside him, thought and said, "You asked me what to do, but the very best thing in your position would be to run away. But unhappily that is useless. You would be taken up." The doctor says, when society protects itself from the criminal, mentally deranged, or otherwise inconvenient people, it is invincible. There is only one thing left for you: to resign yourself to the thought that your presence here is inevitable. And then, so long as prisons and madhouse exist, someone must be shut up in them. If not you, I; if not I, some third person. Wait till in the distant future prisons and madhouses no longer exist, and there will be neither bars on the windows nor hospital gowns. Of course, that time will come sooner or later. Now you see how Andre, the doctor, you know, opines about his patient. "My honored friend, I don't believe it," he whispered, laying his hands on his heart. "I don't believe them. It's all a sham. My only illness, my illness is only that in 20 years I have only found one intelligent man in the whole town, and he is mad. I am not ill at all. It's simply that I have not got into an enchanted circle which there is no getting out. I don't care. I am ready for anything." This is what the doctor says when he himself was forced into the lunatic asylum. And you see how the story ends. When the doctor himself was caught, beaten up, and finally the hospital porters came, took him by his arms and legs, and carried him away to the chapel. There he lay on the table with open eyes, and the moon shed its light upon him at night. In morning, the porter came, prayed piously before the crucifix, and closed his former chief's eyes. Next day, Andre was buried. Mikhail and Darayushka were the only people at the funeral. And that is how, the story ends. So beautiful, haunting, existential short story. Please read it. It is also a commentary that in the face of absurdity, okay, we have no choice but to face that absurdity. And whatever happens, we cannot control it. If you have still not liked, shared, and subscribed my YouTube channel, Arguably the Reading Quest, please do that. Please do let me know how did you like this story? How did you like this episode? Happy reading, guys. Thank you so much.